The Book of Psalms, verse 6 and 7. The land yields its harvest. God, our God, blesses us. Verse 7. May God bless us still, so that all the ends of the earth will fear him. Okay, so today's video is going to be about, it's called The Mortal Instruments. Okay, so this channel that this channel that's been created, it's called Christian RPG Gamers. It's kind of like a little bit like a community, a little bit like a ministry. It talks about nerdy stuff, and it's usually just some kind of like a Christian message spun in it in some way, shape, or form. Okay. So there's a series. It's called I guess I'll just kind of give a brief overview of the series, right? So it's called The Mortal Instruments. It's a book series. I think it's her name is called Calissa Clare, and I think this is a poster here. There's a movie made on it, and there's also like a TV show called like Shadowhunters. And I think there's also, I think the book series also has a prequel and a sequel to the series. So there is a considerable amount of options and content available for it, right? Again, I think it's called like Audible. I haven't watched or listened to the series in a long time. But it is still an interesting series that I like. It's been probably a good 4, maybe 5 years since I've listened to this series. I think I watched maybe season 1 of the TV show. I've seen the movie. I've probably seen the movie a couple times, and I listened to the audiobooks of the main core vanilla series of. It's called the Mortal Instruments, right? Okay. I'm not sure if there's a trailer available on YouTube or not. Let's just take a look and see what I can find on YouTube. I think this is for the movie they made. Obviously, fair use is a thing. I have no idea. Some of these companies can be finicky about whether they let you show content or not. I'll try it. I'll give it a chance. Okay, so let's watch this trailer. You can kind of get this a little bit of you can see a little bit of what the series is about a little bit. I haven't watched this trailer of this movie in a long time.
Every day you live your life.
You make sure you come straight home tonight.
Ordinary, normal.
You know your mom, she gets like this sometimes.
But there's only so long you can hide from the truth.
Let's go in here.
What is it?
You didn't see that?
What are you looking at?
Why can I see you and no one else can?
You're not a mundane.
What is a mundane?
Someone from the human world.
Well, if not a human, then what am I?
You wouldn't believe me if I told you.
Mom, I'm coming home!
No, you can't come home. You understand me? You don't come home.
Mom! Mom?
I've been killing demons for over a third of my life.
You killed 2 cops! They weren't cops!
Demons exist across the world in their varying different forms.
I don't understand what any of this has to do with my mom.
Your mother was a shadow hunter, like him, like you.
There's a map inside your head, Clary. You are the key to our survival.
What is it about her? She's different. She's gonna get us all killed.
What now?
To pick up a few things. Clary, wow, you look different.
I can't talk now, sorry.
The world is ours to take. This is about more than us.
Humanity is on the very brink of extinction.
Chase thinks he needs to save the world,
There's too many of them.
but you don't need to encourage him to do it.
Have a little faith. You have an incredible gift, and we need you. I need you.
The werewolves are here to save us. I never thought I'd say that.
You know, while I'm at it, let's just go ahead and just watch the trailer for the Shadowhunters while I'm at it for season 1. Apparently, this came out like 8 years ago. So, I mean, I'm kind of like an old man, you know, right? So, I mean, granted, I'm only in like, you know, in my early 30s, but you know, it depends on your point of view how someone's old or not. All right, obviously, there's fair use. Hopefully, you know, I think, you know, watching trailers is probably not that big of a deal. It's available, but trailers are generally fair use for the most part. Now, it could be a little bit more shady when it comes to like actual like full content, but I think it should be fine. But if not, you'll know why. It's either muted, it might be muted, and it might just not be in the video, or we'll see what happens, right?
I don't want her part of our world.
You're not protecting her, Jocelyn. You're deceiving her.
Mom, I don't want to do this.
Hush, little baby, don't you cry. I think I killed a guy.
You may run,
The protections are wearing off. You need to know the truth.
run on.
Oh, what the? You're more powerful than you know.
Mom, remember, I love you. What's happening? Mom!
I'd like to speak to Jocelyn's daughter.
What? No, thank you for saving your life?
We're Shadowhunters. We protect the human world from the demon world.
She's in more danger than you can possibly imagine.
You're one of us,
I'm not interested in your supernatural fight club.
which is what makes you so interesting.
I'm ready.
Those were some trailers. Okay, so again, honestly, it probably just gives me a little bit of some spark of it kind of reminds me and kind of jolts my mind a little bit of what the series is about a little bit too before I talk about it. I'm pretty sure I made a video at one point talking about it a little bit, or at least I talked about it somewhere on the internet at one point. So there might be something out there I talked about it, but we'll make another one, right? Okay, so some aspects. I didn't write down a ton, but I wrote down a little bit of something here. So some stuff that it might be based off of. So there's obviously the TV show called Supernatural. I think there's it's kind of like a movie, a little bit of a theme. It's called Van Helsing, or like a little bit of Dracula. Maybe a little bit about kind of like The Witcher, some stealth. And to be honest with you, one aspect of this series, one way or the other, it is very, very deep. It's deep Christian themes in it too. Now, I don't actually know if the person who made this is a Christian or not. I'm probably leaning on the aspect that she's not. But then again, I really just don't know the answer. But I think it's called like a biblical or Christian. I probably can't pronounce the word. It starts with the letter A. It's like apocrypha. Or something like that, if you can even understand, like apocrypha, or something like that, right? It's like basically Christian themes that you get to see in like the backgrounds of lots of stuff, and it's called the Mortal Instruments. Have a lot of Christian themes deeply interwoven in the series. So as you can see from some of those trailers, it showed the idea of. So obviously, it has to do with the shadows, right? And they fight against like demons. Now, okay, so forgive me if I don't remember the lore or all the details perfectly. It's been a while since I've listened to or watched the series, but oh yeah. Also, I'll also say, by the way, I'm probably going to talk about some pretty strong spoilers throughout the series. So up until this point, there really hasn't been any spoilers, but I'm going to be real with you. I'm probably going to talk about a handful of some pretty strong spoilers. I mean, obviously, most of my spoilers are pretty general and they're kind of light. But I'm just going to say, like, you've been warned, right? At this point going forward, there's going to be at least a handful of some pretty strong key spoilers to a handful of specific things. So I would turn away now if you don't want that, right? Okay. Okay. So what are some of the things in the series that it talks about? So one aspect, again, like, forgive me if I don't get it perfectly right, but at least it's more of like an idea about it, right? So one aspect is it's kind of like angels versus demons a little bit, and like the idea of what a shadow hunter really is. I think they're called. Obviously, there's a lot of biblical inspiration. It is also a fantasy series at the same time. I think they're known as like Nephilim, basically kind of like an angel that comes to this earth, and maybe the angel has like children. It's kind of like, again, like, I'm not saying like again, some of this stuff is kind of shady. There's different words and names for this stuff. It's kind of like, an angel, a little bit of an angel, a little bit like a human being. Maybe you're kind of like trapped in like the middle ground between these two things, and again, you're trying to like save humanity, or you're also just it's a lot of this stuff, to be honest. It's pretty self-serving in its own right too. But then again, so is being human, at the end of the day. Yeah, so they're called like, shadow hunters, and they belong to this little society or group, like kind of like a little club of people. And they take on these missions, and they try to, I guess, like, fight some, they're fighting against like spiritual forces of darkness. So I think, yeah, they have the ability to turn themselves invisible, or they are just normally invisible to regular human beings. Obviously they fight in the shadows. They have these, they have some kind of like, swords or blades, or they might use some kind of pistols or something. And, they fight against like the spiritual darkness. And they're like, they're expertly trained in this kind of stuff. Yeah, and then, okay, so obviously, there's the main plot of the story too. I don't think I'm not going to go too heavily into the plot. Obviously, if you want to watch it, I mean, honestly, I might go at some point, go back and watch it myself more. And if I go and watch it, I'll probably make more videos about it. So I might just skip some of the plot, but I mean, obviously, you kind of saw some of the basics of the plot, right? From the trailers, anyways. I'm probably going to talk more about some of the Christian themes in this series. Or just some of the cool stuff. Like some of this other stuff is kind of like, it's like kind of a side plot, but it's not like the main plot. Okay, so again, I might have to. Okay, so yeah, you just give me 1 second here. Let's take a look here. To kind of remember some of the characters' names. I just couldn't remember exactly who they were called. Okay, so I think the main character's called. Her name is it's called Clary. I think they would get. Okay, let me try to say that again. Clary, or I think, is that her name? Okay, man, I cannot for the life of me. I know this is the person who made the series. I think her name is like Calissa. So I think, okay, so that girl here in this picture, obviously, and the person to the left, I believe his name is called Jace, or something like that. Here, I have a Wikipedia open here. Let's take a look at it here. Okay, so Clary. Again, I don't want to go too heavily into the spoilers about the main plot. Okay, so her name is Clary. One of the big main villains is called Valentine. And then pretty much like one of the other main characters' name's Jace. and then I think Simon is her other, like, her best friend. Okay. And I don't want to talk about the spoilers of, like, the main plot too much. Obviously, I think enjoying content is good too. I mean, I'm showing their names or some of the characters about them. Okay. But I will talk about the spoilers when it comes to, like, the Christian faith. I think there's, like, I mean, obviously there's a fictional fantasy world too. So the main character, I believe his name is called Valentine. The main antagonist, like the big bad villain of the series, or at least early on, right? His name is called Valentine. He is basically like a very anti-God individual. So one aspect of Shadowhunters, or it's called the Mortal Instruments. It honestly speaking, this series is based pretty heavily based off of God. Like, God is a very big, strong aspect of this series. And I think the main character, like the main villain, he's very anti-God, and that's a huge thing, right? And again, like, there are some Christian imagery and aspects in the series. I know that at one point they go to like the Vatican. And that there are some angels in the series. You'll see. I'm sure I talked about this in another video, but I'll talk about it again, right? Again, like, I want to keep it more spoiler free or spoiler light on the main plot. So I'm not going to talk about too much about some of the aspects of the main plot, right? But when it comes to the Christian faith, I know that at one point there is an angel. Well, like in holiness, an angel from God himself, right? Like more of like a biblical angel of some sort. I can't remember the name they used. I know they're fighting against an enemy. I believe her name is called Lilith, like a demoness. And there's also an angel. I think they may have given the name angel. I think he was called Raphael. Although I can't remember. I'm sure looking it up will be very hard because it's from the books. But one of the characters has from the Bible, right? There's it's called like I can call it like the Curse of Cain, or the Mark of Cain. So in the Bible, I think from the book of Genesis, there was Cain and there was Abel, and in holiness, God himself, or he's also known as it's called the Lord himself, the Lord God. He places a mark on Cain's forehead, that because Cain, obviously you probably heard this story before. I don't need to read the full story. I'll just kind of explain it a little bit though. Cain murders his brother because because Abel gave good offerings from his supplies, and Abel gave good offerings, and Cain gave some of his average to worse stuff, and God did not accept what Cain gave him, and God did accept what Abel gave him. So Cain was angry. He went out to the fields, and he killed his brother. And then the Lord came to Cain and was like, "Where is Abel at?" And Cain was like, "Am I my brother's keeper?" And God in heaven was angry, and he placed this mark upon Cain to prevent him from, to basically, it was a curse. It prevented him from being able to reap from the land very easily. It made his work very hard, and it was just really devastating. It was a really devastating consequence. And the other aspect of the mark of Cain was that if anyone were to kill Cain, God would punish that person, I believe 7 times over in exchange. So nobody wanted to go out and kill Cain because God would punish the person who, if somebody killed Cain, right, or like I think maybe mistreated him horribly, or took advantage of his situation. Obviously, I don't know for sure the exact details, but if they killed him, God would punish him. God would punish the person who killed him like 7+ times over. It'd be very, very bad. Like God's retribution, I think 7 times is a lot. Also, another fact, right, is that people in the Old Testament, especially in Genesis, people in modern day times, we have a maximum lifespan of like 120 years. People back in like the Old Testament in Genesis, I'm not 100% certain how long people will be able to be alive for. You could have lived till you're 1,000 years old. You could have potentially lived till you're 2,000 potentially years old. So life was a lot more valuable then than it is now. Most people don't live till they're more than 50, 60, 70 years old. People could live till they're 900 years old then. So getting punished 7 times over, or even that curse, is a tremendous punishment. Because, a 7-fold punishment, if you're going to live 1,000 years, is really devastating. So maybe that this kind of places some some understanding from like the Bible, right? But in Shadowhunters and the Mortal Instruments, the Mark of Cain comes back. Now, I don't remember exactly how they were able to gain access to this curse, but like an angel throughout the series does not like that there was a curse. Now, I'm not going to go into the plot too much, but this angel was very angry that they had this curse, because in holiness it comes from God. What God uses is regarded as sacred and holy and righteous and good, and for them to use one of God's ancient biblical powers and curses to place upon somebody like this, would be an extremely bad thing in ways, or it would be deemed as borderline like sacrilege, or it's very sacred. So you should hold sacred things, especially from like the Old Testament, in a very high regard. And they use this curse for a reason. And this angel agrees to help this group of people in a scenario, but in exchange, he gets to remove this Mark of Cain from this person. So again, that's just like an example of like a very deep biblical aspect of the series, right? So yeah, there's that to it, right? Now, I don't know if I want to make this video too much longer. I might make it about 30 minutes, but we'll see what happens here. Again, and also, again, the series, it has a lot of romance. It has a lot of cheesy stuff to it also. It's kind of like, like a cool person's club. It can be subjective and a little bit shady, maybe, depending on one's point of view. I mean, I don't know if I would say this series is made for a female to watch. I think, to be honest, this series, I think both a man or a woman could watch this series and enjoy this either way. It's pretty it's pretty temperate in that sense. Obviously, the main character is a female, but honestly speaking, I think that either of the biological genders could, men or women, could watch this series or could read the books, and it'd be fine, right? There's enough content for both groups of people to kind of enjoy either way. But honestly speaking, it is pretty cool at the end of the day. But yeah, it is a cool series, and there is obviously a lot of Christian themes in it too. But it's not necessarily a Christian series. I'd say it's a pretty neutral series, and it explores a lot of ideas. And again, it's a lot of fun, and sometimes it's enjoyable to watch some fantasy or some fiction, right? And again, it brings in some other ideas. I think in the trailers it showed a little bit of like a werewolf. It shows some some enemies or some creatures or some beings that might exist in the dark, or maybe there's also some spiritual light to it. And again, they go on these missions. They try to do some things to stop. Or they try to stop some dark forces, and there's just a lot of fun to be had. And there's a lot of adventure. There's some romance to it sometimes. There's there's a lot of drama. Like the characters have to learn to grow. There's a lot of character growth. It's probably meant more for like it's probably more for like the older teenagers to like becoming more of an adult. This is probably not like it's probably almost more like an adult series than it is probably like maybe an older teen. But again, like there's a lot of really interesting, cool stuff to it also. But it's also a fantasy world. It's kind of like reality clashes with fantasy a little bit. So obviously there's some Christian themes in it, but there's also some really questionable stuff too. But to tell someone the truth, sometimes that's just life, right? So yeah, it's definitely a series that I've enjoyed, and I honestly wouldn't mind going back and enjoying it again. I think it's a little bit older at this point. I think there's like 3 seasons of the TV show. I know there's the movie, and I know there's like the vanilla series. I'm pretty sure. Now, I haven't read the books really, or really watched on Audible in a long time, but I'm pretty sure there is a prequel, and I'm also pretty sure there's a sequel to it from the book series also. So it goes deep in depth of long before what happened during like the Mortal Instruments, and then also I'm pretty sure that at this point they're probably both completed. They might even have another arc beyond that. That's probably way too much, to be honest. But so either the author either canceled it or didn't write it, or it should be completely done at this point. But there is quite a bit of content out there, right? Now, I do enjoy so as an individual, right? Now, I want this to be like more of like a community kind of channel, like channel that's like based around, not always based around myself, but like obviously I do make the content. I am generally a pretty big fan of the idea known as it's called like low fantasy, kind of like a low power, low fantasy. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of like when fantasy gets cranked up too much. I don't really like that. And I don't like the excessive like pagan themes and stuff in fantasy either. Like just some fantasy themes can make a series significantly more interesting, but when you start adding too much to it, I think it makes it really bad. I guess it's raining out a little bit here. You might hear a little bit of some rain. Honestly, it's probably not gonna be too much longer, but yeah, and adding some Christian themes into it and adding some fantasy themes to it. I think it definitely makes a series really interesting. And I mean, it's a little bit darker sometimes. But there are moments of light at the same time too. And it has some pretty intricate aspects and concepts in it. And a lot of times it's also just a lot of fun. And I think fun factor is a pretty important thing. Now, I think there might be, as a Christian, obviously some of this stuff gets kind of shady. There might be a little bit of some sorcery use every once in a while. There might be some perversions to it. I don't really know. Some of that stuff is pretty gray. It's pretty shady. But like you have to decide for yourself. At the end of the day, my general philosophy, or like kind of like the philosophy for the channel, I guess too, is my general view is that I'm not the moral authority. And I mean, I'm not saying there aren't people out there who aren't the moral authority, but but I as an individual, and I'm not the moral authority, right? I mean, people can abuse their power and they can abuse their rights heavily. There are people who hurt people badly every day, right? Obviously, some things do have to be shut down or at least stopped. But I as an individual, my personal philosophy is that I don't like to tell people what to do or what to say, or really what to think or what to feel or what to believe at the end of the day. God Himself in heaven, He in holiness, He is the moral authority of the universe. And if He isn't, then no one literally is. He's the highest, most supreme being in the universe. And as a Christian, I worship Him. And if you're a Christian, I mean, I would say you definitely do worship Him, or you should. or I really would question your faith if you don't. There's God the Father, God the Son, and God the Spirit. Yeah, like, I'm not the moral authority, and I don't like to tell people what to do. And there's just tons of content out there, right? Like, we can enjoy it. Another philosophy, I guess I have a lot of philosophies, but I generally view pretty much all entertainment as being neutral. I mean, it's not inherently good, but it's also not inherently evil. It's pretty neutral, and it's pretty morally gray. Pretty much all entertainment, for the most part, I generally believe, there might be an exception. I'm sure somebody could argue an exception, that pretty much all entertainment is neutral, somewhere between neutral to morally gray. And you can find good, or you can also find evil in it. And you can also just enjoy yourself, for however long you're going to walk this earth until you die. And that's kind of what entertainment's meant to be. So yeah, like, this is definitely a cool series if you're interested in interested in either reading the books. I mean, to be honest, I probably recommend listening to them on, like, an audiobook. The movie's kind of jank. It's really the movie is really cheesy, but it's still enjoyable, right? And it's Shadowhunters. I think it's made by, like, the CW or something. I don't even know how many different seasons they have. I think there's 3 seasons out. I'm not even sure where you can find that TV show to be at. Maybe you can find it. Yeah, go check it out if you're interested in it. It's kind of like, some fantasy, some realistic stuff. It's just a lot of fun at the end of the day, and there's some Christian themes in it. All right, but yeah, thanks for watching. God is good.